Everyone, I'm going to present this course, which is Nature-Inspired Computing. So firstly, I'll present an overview of the course, then the outline, then talk briefly about the materials, and then have a discussion where you may ask questions, and we can have a discussion about this course. So the objective of this course is to use meta-heuristics that are inspired in nature for search and optimization. There are many algorithms that we could study, and we have selected some of them, mainly inspired in social organization, biology, theory of evolution, and other things like that. And the aim of the course is not only to present these algorithms and to allow the students to better understand them by trying them and implementing them, but also to give the students the opportunity of selecting a specific problem and apply these techniques in order to help them solve them. So the learning outcomes is that students should be able, after this course, to demonstrate some insights on nature-inspired computation, implement these algorithms, these methods into specific algorithms, and apply these algorithms to some search and optimization application. So mainly, how does the course work from the teaching perspective? We have lectures. These lectures should introduce the theoretical concepts, but this course would work better if it is possible to have practical sessions where students work in small groups and try to implement these algorithms, because only by trying them in practice, they will get an understanding of how they work. So the students will get several assignments where they have to implement something and submit reports or perform class presentations that will help other students to better understand these algorithms. This depends on, for instance, how many students you have on a course. If you have a very small number of students, this course will work differently if you have a very large number of students. So I think the main idea initially is to select some papers and introduce these concepts, give the papers to the students, and have the students implement the bare bones of each of these techniques. This will allow the students to have a feel of the algorithms and see how they work, instead of using, for instance, a toolkit that already has everything implemented and that is hard to use, because the students will not grasp the techniques and understand exactly how they work. So furthermore, the idea is to finally have the students implement a project where they take a problem from the studying of the problem, presenting the formulation, implement it, run it, and then validate the kind of results that they have. This is very important, and this is a cycle that must be followed by the students in order to better understand how these techniques can be used in practice. So as a tentative example of an evaluation, there could be an exam, so a theoretical exam with questions. This could range, for instance, from 40 to 60% of the final grade. There should be some group assignments. These group assignments should be something that is a continuous evaluation practice, where students are implementing some small algorithms and see how they work in practice. And there should be a group project that would be worth 30 to 40% of the final grade, where students try to apply one of these algorithms to a very specific, one or more of these algorithms to a very specific problem. And this should be the crowning achievement, where the student will better understand how these techniques work and how they should be applied in practice. In the practice, concerning programming languages, we are completely agnostic. So your students may use any programming language that they like. The thing here is to balance the power of the language versus the efficiency of the language. For instance, highly expressive languages allow students to implement prototypes very quickly, but sometimes these languages are quite slow. But from our perspective, students may use any technique they like. For instance, I have seen that other courses teach Python, so students could use Python on this course. They could use any other kind of language that they like. For instance, something a little bit more efficient, like C++ or Java or something like that. That's open to perspective. So the students should work in small groups, get specific papers that after the theoretical sessions, and try to implement it and replicate the results. If they can replicate the results, then the system must be working and can be applied to other problems. But it's a very good way of helping students understand how things work. So when trying to solve more complex problems, they are all, of course, they can of course use frameworks that are freely available from each of these algorithms. So the course outline is more or less like this. We start by bio-inspired algorithms. These include things like genetic algorithms and their variants. These are usually inspired in the theory of evolution, and they are applied to several optimization problems with the different representation types like strings, booleans, programs, grammars, and stuff like that. In socially inspired algorithms, these are algorithms that are inspired in either social interaction or organization of animals or people or things like that. Then we have other algorithms that use other metaphors like physics, evolution strategies, and stuff like that. Following that, we have different strategies for empowering the search, which includes, for instance, multi-objective problems, handling constraints, premature conversions, and other things like that. And then we have some specific applications like machine learning or robotics or other data mining techniques, things like that. So the outline of the sessions, when we talk about bio-inspired algorithms, we are talking about genetic algorithms, genetic programming, and grammatical evolution. In socially inspired algorithms, we have particle swarm, Jaya algorithm, gray wolf optimizer, and ant colony optimization. In other algorithms, we have differential evolution, simulated annealing, and evolution strategies. For the strategies for empowering the search, we have multi-objective, everything that has to do with multi-objective optimization, premature conversions, fitness sharing and niching, island models, cellular models, population structures, max extinction models, approaches based on elitism and constraint handling. And when talking about specific applications, we have machine learning, neural evolution, and clustering. So these are some of the reference books that were used to organize the slides that I'll leave for you to peruse over them. We have things from nature-inspired optimization, genetic algorithms, evolutionary optimization, genetic programming, differential evolution, and stuff like that. And also some articles that are focused on other points that are not covered on the books or that are things that could be interesting. Finally, I'm open to questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I can start with a question, maybe to provoke the participants. Rui, can you stop sharing it for now? Just
sure.
Okay. Basically, you have some assignments during the course and a final project also?
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more of type of assignments?
The assignments. Okay, I can even share another set of slides that have some possible assignments and projects. Will this be helpful?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And it would be helpful to share it in platform afterwards.
This is already in the platform.
Okay.
It's already a part of the platform, but I can share it right now. Just give me a couple of seconds.
Usually this is a question that a lot of people places here because they are starting it.
Okay, so some possible applications. Let me see if this is, no, this is not the current. No, sorry, this is not the one. Just 1 second, please.
Okay.
So, for instance, for assignments, my idea is to have something like small seminars where the students, for instance, take some papers and present an overview of these papers to the rest of the class. To implement one of the algorithms that was studied in class in a programming language of their choice and discuss the difficulties that they had, how they can use this tool and what difficulties they had. Something like mini quizzes, fully replicate the experiments of a paper and their results, or use a tool to solve a very simple problem. For instance, optimizing a function, finding the optimum of a function or something like that, or something that is very simple to do and can be done in a couple of hours or something like that. Then the idea of projects is to have, I'm going to present, for instance, some of the projects. One of these is, for instance, protein folding, using a very simple model, which is the 3D HP model of protein folding. Try to have a good configuration of a protein that has a minimum energy. Another example is to solve the TSP, so the traveling salesman problem. There are many different problems available online with the solutions, and then students can try different strategies and see how they work to solving these problems. Another possibility is to try to solve the capacitated vehicle routing problem. There are also some data sets available online that have the solutions and where students they can try their approaches and see how well they work. then it is possible to compare, for instance, real optimization problems in, for instance, the SEC 2014 benchmark with many different kinds of functions. This is for real optimization, but it's also a possibility. Another possibility, for instance, is to try different approaches for performing symbolic regression, to try to investigate the relationship between the planet's distance from the sun and their orbital periods. And another example is a very simple data mining task where we want to see what's the relationship between the average number of pedestrians in a zone and the number of birds and things like that. So I'll stop sharing now.
Okay. Thank you. Please, we are open to questions.
I have some questions about how to check the progression of the student, because the idea of each algorithm is very abstract. How to check that the student can get the correct vision, how an algorithms can be developed from nature.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase your question? I didn't, I think you want to see what is the evolution of the student. Is that it? If the student is grasping a given algorithm to help them get a better understanding?
Yes.
Okay. So one possibility, many of these algorithms, it is possible to do this when we, for instance, we plot the evolution during the optimization. So for instance, let me give you a very simple example.
Yes.
When I was beginning my PhD many years ago, I was trying to replicate the results of an algorithm, and I was getting very bad results. This was very obvious to me. Because why? Because when I plotted the fitness function over the number of iterations, there was no evolution. So one way that students can understand if they are getting good results or not is to plot the evolution and compare it against what is a typical evolution for that kind of algorithm when solving that kind of problem. If they have something that is typical, then they know that they are getting a very good result. If they get something that, on the other hand, is, for instance, flat, then they know the result, they don't have very good results, and they have to investigate what is the reason. This depends from problem to problem. For instance, in my case, the problem was that I didn't really understand what the paper was saying, and I was applying the algorithm wrong. So when I was discussing this with my TA, my teaching advisor, he asked me a couple of questions and realized what was my error. So this is one way of doing this, of estimating what is the progression of the student. Another way is to perform statistical tests and understand if the final result of the optimization is within the acceptable bounds, or they are getting wrong results. If this happens, again, it's important to help the students understand where they are, where is their error, where they are implementing the algorithm wrong. This is one of the reasons where I advocate that it is better to start by very small and simple versions of the algorithm instead of very complex ones, because students need to grasp the simple algorithm before starting to add new things and new different ideas that try to optimize something better. So the main idea is mainly this, to help the students implement these algorithms so they can better understand how they work, and to be able to provide comparisons so they understand if they are implementing the algorithm well or not. If they are within the acceptable bounds, or if their results are worse than those that are expected. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any more questions?
Can I ask something?
Sorry? Sure.
Yeah, this is Amarka from UOP. Yeah. It's also related to these questions that have been already asked. You mentioned about the projects. Are there any industry-related projects that can be used in this course? Like, because this master's program, we have a component where students go for an industry training. So the relevance of this content to the training, something like that.
Okay, it's possible to do this, but usually what I think is that industry projects should be usually something that is related to students. So we could add one or two industry-related problems, but I think they would be too specific, and only a few of the algorithms could be used to solve them. So usually we think it's better for each university to try to find some industry projects and give them to students, because they usually relate better to those projects than to something that is very specific. For instance, I can give you one or two different industry-related projects.
Sorry to interrupt you. There is always the famous traveling salesman problem. It's obviously one of the normal one that we can implement it easily to do that, of course. But
yes, it was on the assignments.
That, of course, it's so traditional to do that we never remembered it is one application that the one that Amalka mentioned. Okay.
In the assignments that I published, I had the TSP, the traveling salesman problem, and the capacitated vehicle routing problem. For instance, just to give you an example, one of the recent studies that I have conducted was to do something similar to the vehicle routing problem because of scooters in Barcelona. We have many different places where tourists can rent scooters, and usually scooters are left in any of the stations, and there is a need to rebalance the scooters among the different places. This is similar to TSP and similar to capacitated vehicle routing problems. So these kinds of problems are always emerging in practice, and it is simply a matter of trying to find formulations that are similar to these ones, for instance.
Nevertheless, in a master degree, in this proposal there will be internships. So this can be. It depends on the subject of the company, of course, but it can be used this kind of course to emphasize and propose some projects to the companies. Okay, more questions, please.
Yeah, one more thing. about the background that is expected from the students who follow this course. Do you require any specific knowledge to begin with, like in your case?
I don't think it's really necessary to have a specific background. It is important that people are able to program in the, have a programming language, to have some knowledge of mathematics, to understand what is an optimization problem. For instance, what is the formulation of an optimization problem? So these are the background that students should have in order to better understand these
Don't
subjects.
forget that inside the master, and they have also a course on AI and one in machine learning. So, and this course occur after these two. They give also the background to very well acquire the new competence. Okay, relate to AI, namely because of machine learning is also very related with this one. Okay, and some of the problems, by the way, that probably our colleague that they will mention in machine learning should be or can be, sorry, also solve, namely the problems related to optimization and search can in certain case be solved using these techniques also. And at the end, the students can also compare the result and so see in which context it will be better to use the traditional, if I can say that, approach by machine learning and the one that probably will be better to use these techniques and not the other one. Okay.
Feel free to have more questions. Rui or Paulo, is there any specific infrastructure you need to run this course in terms of computing and programming?
Yeah, that was my next question too.
No, a laptop will suffice. Unless you want to do something that is very heavy computationally, a standard laptop will suffice.
It's also important to mention that typically nowadays Python is the most common language for these problems. But of course, there are libraries in most of the package that you can use. If I'm not wrong, even in R, if I'm not wrong, a few years ago I used R also. So I think there are libraries that can be used by the students in different fields.
Yeah, there are libraries in Java, C++, R. There are also libraries in MATLAB, for instance.
Yeah,
there are libraries in many different systems. The main difference between these implementations is, as I said, efficiency. If you have a problem that requires in the evaluation some computing power, then there is a difference between, for instance, having something in MATLAB or having something in Java or C++. You'll see the difference. But that's the main difference between the different applications. It depends on the application. If the evaluation of a solution is very fast, for instance, less than 10 milliseconds or something like that, any computing infrastructure can be used. If you have something that needs a lot of computing power, then it's more difficult because you'll need to use something that uses multi-cores and stuff like that, better computing language like C++ or something like that, that has better in the context of efficiency. But that's something that is specific to some problems.
Probably, the students and even our colleagues, the professor, will note the difference just in case of the final. Imagine a PhD thesis or a master thesis in that context. Not in the context of this, the course, of course.
No, in the context of the course, I think any programming language can be used. It will not be a problem because the main difference when we are talking about efficiency is when the problem that we are trying to solve is very complex. And it takes a lot of time to evaluate one solution. If one solution takes, for instance, 10 seconds or 20 seconds to evaluate, then that is going to be a problem. If the one solution takes a microsecond to evaluate, anything can be used. That's the main difference. Any more questions?
We also have some PhD students from KKU. May I introduce Florentina? Please welcome.
Hi, Florentina.
Thank you, Ajahn Karmu. I think that I started learning about nature-inspired computing from Ajahn Kamrun, and it's in my experience, it really is interesting. But I want the slide that you show us is only the outline. Do you have the detail just for us to see a glance of the detail of the material that you give to your students?
The material that is given to the students, it's more than 200 slides covering these different subjects. I can show you one of those, for instance, so that you have an idea of what is the...
We have already put everything in the
yes.
chat. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, as my colleague said, Florentina, in the platform that we share,
in the platform,
it's everything is there, and I hope that the Athens University will move it eventually to the virtual learning environment. But nevertheless, please
an example, please.
An example, a simple example.
Set of slides, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have another question. Before we compute in many, it can be computed in many different languages, right? But from the start, we have to know about the formula first. So how do you give those explanations? Because there are many, and then it's merged with.
Usually, Florentina, in this is a simple course on this subject. Prior to this, they had already learned about a lot of programming tools and lab work and so on. That is the basis for the students are already available, have sufficient knowledge to programming when they attend this course. So this is a prerequisite, and they have already visit labs and so on.
Yes, of course. Of course.
So how do you divide those assignment in because there's a mid semester, there's a final exam like that for this course.
Okay, so the assignments, my idea about the assignments is to have them either during each class or every other class or something like that. These should be small assignments that are given after, for instance, I teach a class about particle swarms. Let's say about particle swarms. At the end of this class, I will ask the students to replicate the algorithm and to apply it to a very specific and simple function, and for instance, finding the minimum of a parabola or something like that in 30 dimensions. and monitor the progress of the students and whether they are able to implement the algorithm, whether they are able to find good solutions, if the algorithm is working well, if the students are implementing it correctly, if there is something that they are not grasping of the concepts of the algorithm when they are trying to implement it, and to help the students better understand it.
Do you have the sample of that?
Sorry?
Do you have the sample of that?
Yeah, sure. Just 1 second. So as we already said, these are already in the slides that we have shared. For instance, this is this talks about genetic algorithms and stuff like that. So we talk about what a genetic algorithm is, what kind of operators there is, what kind of encodings there is for each of these problems, how new solutions are created, how a crossover works, an example of one-point crossover and how it is performed, an example of two-point crossover, an example of uniform crossover, how the mutation is performed, how the fitness is calculated, for instance, how the selection is performed, the different kinds of selection, how they work, what is the outline of a genetic algorithm, etc., etc., etc. So we are introducing the different kinds of algorithms and how they work, and at the end of each of the sessions, we also have the bibliography that students can consult in order to better understand these algorithms and to have a more in-depth study of each of these algorithms if they are interested.
Most of
so as you say, there are many examples.
Online, okay, most of them are available online already. Okay.
Yes, of course. So this is just the slides about bio-inspired algorithms, so genetic algorithms and stuff like that. There is another one, for instance, for genetic programming. There is another one for grammatical evolution, and so on and so forth. I'll stop sharing now.
Yes.
Do you document the work of your student?
Sorry, can you rephrase that? I didn't understand it.
Do you document the work, the student work for the assignment?
What do you mean by document?
Because they are making a project, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how are you?
I think Florentina is speaking of small practical projects within after several weeks of teaching something.
Yes.
What we call lab work.
Mm-hmm. So yes. When students perform, but are you talking about evaluation of the work, or are you talking about helping the students improve? Because these are two different things.
It's more the text, the proposal you present, the documents with proposal to the students. That's what I understood from Florentina.
Okay. We have that slide that has several different proposals that I showed before, which was called assignments, where this is an example. I think the best way to perform this is to present the students with a presentation with several slides, where each slide has a very small assignment, and the students select one of these assignments and they implement it. These assignments should possibly have more or less the same difficulty. And the students will select between 1, 2, or 3 different assignments and implement them. And at the end of that implementation, the advisor will evaluate the progression of the students during these assignments, if they have grasped the problem correctly or not. These assignments do not have a very large weight on the grade, because I think they are mainly useful for students to understand the concepts and not as an evaluation tool. Depending on the people, I would even say that these assignments could almost be grade free, because the idea is to help students better understand how the concepts work and improve. So we're talking about helping the students increase their capabilities during these assignments. Usually when we implement this, we have a small grade to encourage students to do these assignments. If we have no grade at all, students simply don't do it. But it's more important for the work itself, to help students improve, than to give a grade and evaluate students. Usually we have a more or less small grade, and we are very liberal with it, which means that most students have a high grade when doing these very small assignments, because we want to encourage students to do them and to understand how the algorithms work. Any more questions?
Yep.
But only for the how the algorithm work.
Yes. The main idea is to help students understand how meta-heuristics work and how a specific algorithm works. So the idea is to have a very simple problem that is very simple to explain to a student, where the student can grasp with one slide or two what the problem is, and the student then concentrates on implementing an algorithm that is able to find an acceptable solution to that problem. That's why, for instance, we like the TSP so much, because it's very simple to understand what a traveling salesman problem is. Students relate to it very fast, and then they can concentrate on the algorithm and on trying to solve this problem. If we have something that is more realistic but is very much harder to explain, then students will be lost implementing the problem itself and the evaluation, and they will not concentrate so much on understanding the technique that is used to solve that given problem. So that's why we only have one project where we do something like that at the end of the semester, at the end of the course. During the course, we have very small and specific problems that are very simple to understand, and so the student can concentrate on implementing the algorithms themselves.
Thank you.
I have
Thank you.
answered your question.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
More questions?
Yeah, can I, if no one is asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand it's a lot of algorithms that you discuss, but since the course title is Nature-Inspired Computing, do you also include the rather philosophical discussion on how the algorithms came about at the beginning, or do you just directly go to discuss the algorithms?
I have opted to mainly discuss the algorithms and not delve too much on the philosophical implications, or to explain. For instance, when talking about bio-inspired algorithms, as you have seen, I don't lose a lot of time talking about Darwin, the theory of evolution, of explaining, for instance, how how life emerged on Earth and stuff like that. No, we haven't done much of that. No, but that's probably mainly because I usually don't do it for students. I have other colleagues of mine that delve into things like that and that have several slides presenting the algorithms from these other angles that are also interesting. But in this course, we didn't do this.
Okay, it's important to mention that typically this kind of explanation of the different metaphors that AI at the same, if you want, are normally explained in details in that course, the course of AI or even machine learning, because they give us the big picture of the AI. Okay. So usually we do that in that kind of course, not in this one. This one is more specific, and typically we decide to present the different approach, the different algorithms, not approach, okay? This kind of things that you mentioned, that it's very important also for the students have the big picture, should be done on the course of AI. And when we done AI, at least in our group, on the AI group of NINU, in the introduction of this big area of AI, we have one introduction course called Fundamentals of AI, in which me, Rui, and other colleagues, we give the big picture and we present the inspiration, the fundamentals concept of the different paradigms, metaphors that we use on AI. And one of the one that we give there is naturally we explain the inspiration that we have behind natural inspired computing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That includes ethics, I imagine.
Of course, and at the end we finish with ethics, data protection, etc., etc. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have course online that we can check? The course that you mentioned, where no, no.
I think
no. I mean the material online. No.
But the materials are there.
Okay, I could check it up.
Of course, each university prepares its courses. Sometimes when we see the presentation, we see some overlapping because universities have different designations and some courses are a little bit different. But our experience is for several years, and until now it's working well.
But okay, it's important to mention that the AI course and the machine learning course are not our responsibility, okay? They are being done by other colleagues. But if you look at the outline of the course, you will see that, of course, they can have a different view, a different approach, but they will mention these topics also in that course. It's you know, we do that as by the book typically. And for example, if you look at AI course, on the fundamental course, you will see that they are using the book of Stuart Russell. And if you search the book of Stuart Russell, you will see one of the main class, or the main class, sorry, the introduction class in that course is present the different approach or metaform of and paradigm of AI. It's traditional to do that, okay, on our field.
Okay.
You have some example that I think the nature inspired is very interesting, right? So if it's just a talk, we cannot imagine what you are doing there. So we want to know. It's just sharing knowledge, right?
I imagine you are speaking of examples of nature, the use.
Yeah, the course, everything that you are doing, because we cannot imagine here. It's different.
If you look at ants, the small, or bees,
Yes.
we can compare that with the techniques we use. And it was presented before, the ant technique, the swarm technique, that we copy from biological systems, from ecosystems, to write the structure of a program and an approach where parallel process can cooperate. I'm not the expert on the subject, okay, but Roy or Paul can add something more.
Well, if that is a question, yeah, for instance, ant colony optimization is based on the foraging of ants by following João's example. So mainly when the algorithm that is used deposits pheromone on the edges of a graph, and those edges of a graph are similar to the path that the ant follows when it's searching for food and when it comes back to the nest. And the algorithm itself that is used is similar, but applied to a mathematical problem. For instance, when talking about ant colony optimization, the mathematical problem is usually to find which edges of what is the best path by following a graph for finding a very good solution, for instance. I don't know if this was your question, the metaphors that are behind each of these algorithms. Yes. Was this your question?
That is one example of the optimization.
Okay. Another example, for instance, when talking about genetic algorithms, is sexual reproduction. When you have two mates, the chromosomes of the two mates are combined to when a child is born. So the combination of the chromosomes of the two mates is the same as the crossover that is one of the operators in the optimization algorithm, which is called genetic algorithms. Mutation is something that is a little exaggerated because we need to have an evolution that is much faster than what is happening in nature. And the mutation is similar to when there is a mutation that happens in a given person because it was exposed to radiation or there was an error copying a cell or something like that. And that error is replicated. Sometimes it gives, for instance, it's a metabolical disease or something like that that kills the person, but sometimes it gives an edge to that person. For instance, it's theorized that the evolution of the eyes in living beings started by very small incremental steps that gave an edge to an individual that was able to, for instance, differentiate between different shapes or different levels of light, and by that it had a very small capability of better surviving than other individuals, and this gave it a better fitness. It was able to replicate more and to have more descendants. These are the metaphors behind, for instance, genetic algorithms. The reason why in this course we didn't delve too much in the philosophical implications of these algorithms or why the algorithms work like this was simply to have more algorithms being taught in class. If we wanted to better explain all the implications between, for instance, Darwin's theory of evolution, how living beings work, and how they are replicated into these algorithms in computers, we wouldn't be able to have so many different algorithms being studied. And I think the students will not have a very wide grasp of nature-inspired computing because of this. In practice, I'm not really sure that having a better understanding of the metaphors that were copied into an algorithm will really help the students better understand them. For instance, when I started studying genetic algorithms, I usually fast forward the parts where they talked about living beings and wanted to know how the algorithms work themselves, because these are very crude implementations of very complex phenomena in real life. And what interested to me was, how can I use this to solve an engineering task? How is this useful for me? And for instance, as an example of this, there is one algorithm which is called Lamarckian evolution. And this is inspired in a technique that was proven to be wrong in the 19th century. That was proposed by Lamarck, who was one of the persons that didn't agree with Darwin. And for instance, Lamarck said that giraffes have high necks because when they started to stretch during their life to be able to get the better fruits on the top of the trees, they had a genetic advantage that was passed to their children. This is not true. But there is an algorithm in practice which is called Lamarckian evolution that is useful in practice, and it's used in several different engineering tasks. And it is not scientific from the point of view of the evolution of a species. So we can copy things that are wrong in nature, that are inspired in nature, but that they don't really exist in practice, because that gives us an advantage for solving engineering tasks.
Rui, just to mention in the market, most of the inspiration that we are using in natural inspired computing are very easy to explain. If you use neural networks, easily explain to the students in 5 minutes which are the inspiration. If you use swarm intelligence, it's easy. Professor João Monteiro mentioned a few examples of ants and other animals that use this kind of techniques. So in this course, we are focused in present, as I mentioned before, the techniques. It's because it's important to mention this is in the last year, in the last semester. So we believe that the work of motivation, I think is a kind of motivation work, Malka, typically that we are talking about, should be done in the course of AI. But obviously, we expect that a teacher, when he presents, for example, swarm intelligence, of course, we have the culture, the background to explain in few minutes the inspiration. We know that, and Malka, you have also that background, okay?
Okay.
Can I ask one more thing? Sorry, this is not a question. There's this material called applications that's in the shared space. Would it be possible for you to explain a bit on that? There's one material in the shared space called applications.
Rui, I believe this.
Can you do that, please, Rui?
Yeah, sure. 1 second, please. Okay. So, for instance, we have several different examples here. One is evolving decision trees. Another is about neuroevolution. Then we have examples about feature selection, clustering, and okay, this is it. So this course is given, from what I understood, after a course about data mining, right? Okay, so when talking about evolving decision trees, the concepts that are given here, for instance, accuracy, AUC, and things like that, rolling windows, all of these concepts should be already understood by the students because they have talked about this when they talked about data mining. So in this idea, in this example, our idea is how it would be possible to, instead of using the standard decision trees algorithms that are given in a data mining course, how it would be possible to use either genetic programming that was given previously in the course or grammatical evolution in order to evolve decision trees. For instance, this specific example that we have here is the result of a research project that we have conducted, where we have exactly evolved decision trees for a given example, and we were able to get results that were competitive with other approaches, including deep learning and the standard algorithms about decision trees. Okay, so this is an example of how either genetic programming or grammatical evolution could be used in order to evolve decision trees. What happens is we get one of these algorithms to evolve a tree, and we have a fitness function that uses either, for instance, accuracy or AUC. AUC is the area under the curve, which is something that is specific to data mining. It is given in that course. And then the main issue here is how to evolve something that improves the accuracy of the tree during the work. For instance, that's what we talk about in this slide. In neuroevolution, the idea here is to evolve neural networks by using evolution, okay? There are many different ways of doing this, and we talk about different ways of having the representation. This comes from this paper, which the second paper, which is this evolving decision trees, is from the part about decision trees, designing neural networks through neuroevolution from July in 2019, is the one that we are talking about when we talk about neuroevolution. So the idea here is to have an algorithm based on evolution that is able to evolve to evolve neural networks. There are several studies in this area, and the idea here is to give students starting points where they can try to better understand these applications. So this is at the end of the course, and these are simply pointers to give students, for instance, starting points for a project or something like that. This is about neuroevolution and different techniques in neuroevolution that they can work. SANE is also one of the algorithms that can be used for neuroevolution. NIC is another one of them. The idea here is to give starting points for students to take those papers and to elaborate on these algorithms, or to use one of the tools that implements these techniques and be able to understand more or less how they work. Was this clear, or do you have any more questions about this?
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to know where this
Okay.
fits in the course also. So now I
It
understand.
fits at the end of the course.
Yeah, yeah.
After
And
giving all the different techniques, this is an example of possible applications of these techniques to specific problems that are a little bit more complex.
yeah, thank you. That's great.
You're welcome.
Well, I think we replied to almost all of the questions. Yes. Can I end the session, or is any other question to? Can I? Okay. So thank you very much, Paulo. Thank you, Rui, especially Rui.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
I hope our colleague has enjoyed the session, and also the